Mr. George C. As most people would probably know, he is a respected business leader and investor in various industries. He's a Wharton-trained economist, director of think tank IDSI. Good morning, Sir George.
Hi,
Happy to see you again.
always happy to see you guys.
Thank you. And as I mentioned to Austin, we do have small, especially small business owners, really wanting to hear more about your insights as we are gearing up into post-pandemic recovery, right? And what to expect. But before I head on to that, 3 years ago, citing an interview or an article that you had in Philippine Daily Inquirer, you said something that I had learned many years ago when I went to AIM. And at that time, I wasn't really so very optimistic as a person, but you said, and to quote, "A balance between the two forces of bad and good exists in everything, and that being a purist who believes in only one or the other risks being cynic or a hypocrite." Okay, and that facts and perspectives change over time. Going back to AIM, I had learned, how the Chinese see opportunity and crisis as one, and that really opened my eyes. So maybe this is also what you meant. And if you could further elaborate on that, it would be a great opening to all our listeners who are trying to be optimistic post-pandemic recovery.
Well, I guess we could cite a few examples. If there are times that when we are taking a decision and we take one side and shut out the other options, then when the option is needed, then it becomes a problem. And on the other hand, sometimes when it looks like the doors have been shut, let's take, for instance, in the case of Happy Toothpaste. Well, we're not advertising for them. They were supposed to supply the multinational for the toothpaste tubes. And the multinational, let's not mention them, they had promised them that they would continue to buy tubes from them. So the owner had gambled, Mr. Cecilio Pedro had gambled to buy the equipment, and suddenly the company withdrew. And what happened, he was forced to produce his own because he had put all his savings and all his friends' borrowings into the company, into the machinery, and there was no choice, so he had to try to formulate his own. And to make it short, when he was forced to formulate his own and learn marketing, he now has the major toothpaste brand Happy that's doing very well here in this country. And this is also the same thing that happened with Zesto. They were also asked to buy the equipment by a multinational. So that means that although those relationships had spanned maybe 20 years, and they trusted their buyer, but the time came when the orders came from the headquarters that they had to move to other countries for their manufacturing, countries, the drinks company, the Procter & Gamble and things like that. Then they were caught flat-footed, but because they were forced into a situation they might not have made the jump on their own, they're forced to start their own business, and they become major businesses. Of course, the Zesto Group had become a multi-billion company and things like that. Sometimes if we are very much on just looking at things on one side, the options get tangled, and very much we have to know how we make our decisions, and it's usually something in between. Now, Ukraine refused to. Well, let's look at Vietnam. Vietnam was in more than 10 years war with the U.S. It was crushed. 3 million people died in the war. 3 million people got deformed by Agent Orange, and they were absolute enemies. But now it is a very close ally of the United States and progressing very fast. And while it is progressing very fast, China used to be its ally, and now it's opposed to China, but doing very well with the US, allied with the US. But now China is also a major investor, because although what some years ago, maybe 7, 8 years ago or something, they had riots against Chinese companies.
Mhm.
3 months after, the president went to China and got 200 of the top businessmen to go to China, invited more to come in business, and now China is probably if not the second biggest investor in Vietnam, selling with a population of 70 million or so, exporting maybe 5 times more than the Philippines.
Yeah.
So they have both U.S. investors and China investors. They both have both U.S. market and China market. So on our hand, we had a short lesson before. We had an immediate alitan tayo with China, and immediately they cut the exports, and we lost maybe $2 billion worth of exports. But now, when we got back, we are doing both record trade with U.S. and with China.
And that should be the mindset, right? Because this is what you mean. Like, we can't really be totally purist, And I love that you've brought into history into the mix, right? Because history should actually propel us forward and not make us move backward, right?
Yeah, actually, history is the experiment that we should learn from. It's like learning from on somebody else's tuition fee instead of.
Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it. And so, being part of ASEAN, do you still see us in terms of investment and fiscal structure, as weak? Do you think that we are still the weakest as part of ASEAN at this point, including digital infrastructure?
Actually, from the financial viewpoint, prior to the pandemic, we were probably one of the top 2 or 3 strongest, because during the period since the tax reforms in the period of Gloria Arroyo, the conservatism of President Pinoy, and the expansion in tax collections of Duterte, we became maybe number 6 or 7 in the whole world in the debt to GDP ratio, which means we had the highest. Our ratings went up maybe 2 or 3 times with Fitch and Moody's. So financially, we're very strong. Our reserves we have record reserves now at over $100 billion. We have excellent ability to borrow, but of course we got hit by the pandemic. So in terms of financially, our foreign investments, our cash flow is very strong, although our exports is among the weaker exports. But if we talk about service exports, that means tourism, OFW, tourism and OFW and BPO, we have one of the strongest net cash flows, because if you export $100 billion of goods, your retained in the country is about maybe $20 billion. But the Philippines is getting a cash flow of $30 billion from the OFW, which is like an export of equivalent to $150 billion.
Yeah.
And our BPOs getting about $25 billion is equivalent to about $100 billion of exports. So it's good in a sense. And tourism also, of course. In tourism, we were the weakest, but we could become one of the strongest. Just before the pandemic, we were growing so fast from 3 million tourists a few years before Duterte. Up to 2019, we had like 8.2 million tourists. And China's tourists had tripled, Korean tourists had doubled. So it's growing very fast, but the pandemic hit that. So the prospects are actually good. Now, the investments here, we're talo tayo sa investments, talong-talo, because people say that we have such bad traffic, it's hard to put up factory. Our electricity is so expensive. So these fundamentals we have to try to solve to get the production investments, because without the production, we're like a chair with 2 legs. We're lacking one important leg.
Yeah.
Right. So we need the time can come. We need food. People are going to restrict food exports. We need to produce some of our own food.
Yes.
When we cannot import production material, then we have to produce some of our own. Right. It might be because of world circumstance. It could be because of sanctions, like with Russia. Now they're forced to use. So it's good to always have every leg. We have some very strong legs. We have a couple of weak legs. The build of Duterte has been a big help towards, we're now being considered again as a potential manufacturing investment destination.
That's good for us. So growth rates are good. Interest rates, on the other hand, are also pretty much reasonable. Would say so.
The inflation rates are going up around the world.
Mhm.
Philippines is about 5.8%, which is better than the US, UK, Australia, with they're about 7 to 9%. So we're not doing badly, but inflation is going up and can become a problem. So interest rates are going up around the world. It's gone up. US says they'll bring it up another 1.5% this coming year, which means Philippines will also go up. So if your company is borrowing a lot of its capital, you have to expect the rates might go up potentially 2% over the next year.
Yeah.
Depends on the policies of our economic team. No?
Yeah.
So that 2% can represent a very big increase in your interest payments. And sometimes the banks might decide to call in some of the loans. So be very careful on the borrowings. If you have strong cash flow and the banks know it, they see your accounts, the cash comes out. Maybe you're a restaurant that sells well, you're okay. If your type of business is capital intensive, the cash flow is not as strong, then be careful about borrowing too much or entering new businesses.
Right. Okay, again, going into a little bit of history, and we're talking about China. As far as I have also read, and from what I've learned from you, China is more focused on trade and friendship, rather than colonization, if we should say so, right? Even in the past dynasties of China, that's basically how they wanted to roam the seas, to be friends and to trade, right? Even in my article, for example, if you're looking into the history of Intramuros, Binondo, they were in Binondo and they were the hub for the economy, right? For trade. And so basically that is their focus, the concession to really just work in peace.
Yes. Their tradition has been to trade and do business and investments as well. So if we look at beyond trade, they are now our largest trading partner. And for 1,000 years, they traded with the Philippines, actually 1,200 years from the Tang Dynasty. And there was never any attempt to invade here. Some people mistake the historical events of Limahong as an invasion. Actually, he was a rebel who came not to invade, sort of invade in a small way. He wanted to create his own small kingdom, not to take over the Philippines, but just an area where he can park his followers. And in fact, he married had relations with a lot of Filipinos here. And they brought a lot of technology and agriculture and skills and crafts here. So it's not part of the Chinese government. He's like a rebel who decided to build a base in another country. And when they say they tried to invade Vietnam and Japan, those were actually during periods in which China was ruled by the Mongols when they tried to invade Vietnam. And then when they were ruled, China was ruled by Manchus when they tried to invade, Japan. So it's like saying that the Philippines invaded Malaysia when actually the Philippines was used as a base by the Japanese in invading Malaysia, and it's not Filipinos. No? So that's to correct a little historical misimpression. And there are issues. There are issues. They're legitimate issues. The claims in the sea are quite large, and they're stationing there. But we have to understand the mind of a superpower, a large geopolitical, whether it's Germany or US. When they feel they're being surrounded, they feel they have to have a space. So it's something that, we are not supporting their view, but we understand that they're stationed there because if the US is putting up bases all around, including the Philippines, they want to be able to intercept any missiles, boats, or tanks or stuff before they reach before they're too close, because if without these bases, if the submarines and ships get very close to the borders of a superpower, then it takes only 2 or 3 minutes to send a missile in. There's no time to react. And to put it in perspective, the U.S. also disallows any foreign power to come close to Cuba, Venezuela, which wanted to allow Russia or China to put bases. But Russia and China don't put bases because the U.S. would go to war. And in fact, U.S. has occupied Cuba's Guantanamo, and they've taken over the Venezuelan government until recently, because they wanted to prevent anyone from coming close. So that's a psychology that, whether we think it's right or wrong, it's something we have to live with.
Yeah. Okay. And that's something that business owners have to also reflect. See, when I talk to them, George, I'm like, look into history. Look at how it was back then. Maybe we can learn something from here, because we're so sometimes, friends, I know you're watching, but sometimes, like I always tell you, we're so focused on the present that we don't know how to look back and what we can learn from that. Because you yourself, and I tell this to them, you yourself say, we need to be able to blend realities. Right? And would you agree with that? I know, because you said it too.
Maybe I can cite the example. I think many people have heard of Marco Polo or even seen the Netflix series. It's a very nice series, by the way. It's a trader from Italy, and actually back to the Roman Empire. They would trade with China, the Turkish Empire, the Persian Empire, and the Chinese did not try to expand and take over all of these. They were satisfied they fought each other within their own country to take power, because in their mind, they're so rich that why should you take over
everything?
Everything. Just fight over on your own area. So they traded, and China became very rich. The Silk Road, they say, is trading with all the empires all the way to Europe, the Muslim empires and so on. So but there are times that it was expansionist, and so when the Mongols took over China, they tried to take over the world. No? So it was the Mongols ruling China. So what could see is the Chinese. I think a very good lesson is while China was occupied by the Mongols in the Yuan dynasty, became one of the richest empires in the world, because the Chinese, they didn't want the Mongols. Sometimes they rebelled, but they continued to do business and work. So by the way, the Mongols became the richest empire in the world, together with the Chinese. And then again, in the Manchu Empire, the Manchu dynasty, Qing dynasty, they occupied China for 350 years. And during those periods, China became immensely rich. So that's why the European powers wanted to come in. So even under foreign domination, they decided, okay, you're our ruler, we'll just do our business. And they became very rich under the Manchus.
Right. So in other words, facts, as you have said also before, it must be chosen over speculations. And, we have to go back and re-examine facts, right?
Yeah.
Because, yes, go ahead, George. Yeah.
And in fact, sometimes the facts are negotiable. So they can be changed. You can be influenced. Sometimes it's something so simple as a romance, right? Yeah. Somebody falls in love with and marries this country, or maybe they just like you, and they get you as advisors, right? So the Muslim empires at one time, they had the most open mind. They had all the brightest people around the world, mathematicians, scholars coming. So the Mongol dynasty, Kublai Khan had Marco Polo as one of his advisors. They had all these Jesuits and Europeans coming as advisors. No? And Japan had decided to learn. They sent 1/3 of their government abroad to study. When they saw the Europeans conquer China, they said, well, China is not so powerful after all. Let's learn from the Europeans, because they're more powerful. So they sent 1/3 of their government abroad, studied, but the model they took back was the German model and the American model to try to build a world empire. So that's why they invaded. That's part of the reason why they invaded the all of Asia. They wanted to be the rulers of Asia, the equivalent colonizers of Asia. And the Filipinos have always been peace-loving, in the sense that, they don't think of world empire.
So hospitable.
They're very hospitable, accepted everybody, but then to fight each other between the Datus and islands. But then beyond that, they accepted the Arabs, the Muslims, the Chinese, the Vietnamese,
the Spaniards.
Yeah, actually, they welcome
No,
this.
that's true because, they didn't actually come to the Philippines to discover the Philippines, the Spaniards. They were on their way to somewhere else looking for the Spice Islands. It's
And they
just so
were
happened.
invited. Yeah,
Yeah, and it
they
just so
were.
happened they had an accident in the Philippines, in
Yeah.
Samar, in the eastern Samar, right? And us being so hospitable, we saved their lives. We, gave them tuba, right? Right? So, okay, for those starting small businesses, what would you think is the key role, of MSMEs in developing our economy?
But the MSMEs fulfill they're like little outsourcing companies. So a lot of the big companies would outsource, let's say, garment production,
Mhm.
shoe production, washing, laundry, things like that. And they deliver to the small communities services and products that the big companies do not find it worth their time because the margins and markets are too small. So they fill all the niches. Parang lahat ng mga sulok pinupuntahan, no? Most of this is where it's very important because this is where people learn business on a small scale when they're not employees or hired. And from there, very often it is from these small businesses that if these people keep learning, the ones who learn in the small business and then keep upgrading and leveling up their knowledge, this is where the big companies come from. So this is very much like a lot of people, a lot of Chinois, that's the model. They start out very small. But there are certain models of how to take advantage of this. And I think it's useful to learn because if you want to grow from a small business, uh, if you want to grow from a small business to a large one, you have to immerse your time in that market and in the technology. So there's a tendency. This is a difference because maybe the Chinese culture, the Chinoy culture here is, if you are a small business, there are certain steps they take. The parents don't let the children do whatever they want. So it's kind of a little dictatorial. You have to work in the business. You have to work these hours. You can't just go out with your friends. You can only go out at these times. So that's one advantage they have. There's no holidays. Yeah. So Saturday, Sunday, you make an order or complaint, they'll deal with it. So, but the thing is, the young people, when they're coming up, they think they want to do their own business. They don't think they're doing it for the parents alone. So they will immerse their time, spend the time in the evenings and weekends with their clients and people who they can learn from, bigger businesses they can learn from. Whereas maybe part of the local culture is if your business is doing well enough so that you have your basic necessities covered, the tendency is let's have a good time and let's go drinking and partying, and that's fine because you have to, you have to live your life. Life is not all about money, but maybe the percentage that you spend, you have to spend some time with people you may not like the best.
Yeah.
But you're going to learn from them. Then you
Right.
spend time with the people that you really enjoy.
Right. That's a good one. And of course, if you're starting a small business or looking into that, a lot of people are saying, yeah, at least we can help in creating jobs. That's part of it. We want to extend it to other people who need jobs.
Yes, that's right. So the government can help here by supporting the small business and not making the rules too strict for small business. They can't afford accountants. They can't afford filing all those things. They can't afford all the requirements or having consultants and approvals, accreditation. So you cut the small business some slack. When they grow, then start to tax them when they grow. This is done everywhere in the world that is progressive, no? So more than 90% of the employees are through small business, and many of them cannot afford. I mean, sa totoo lang, many of them cannot afford minimum wage. So even legally, minsan you go to the sari-sari store or karinderya, hindi yan nagbabayad ng minimum wage,
Oo
no?
nga eh. It's
But
good that you brought that up. Tama. Yeah.
that's the reality. So if we're going to be purists, walang mangyayari. So let them grow. When as they grow, they become a Jollibee. They become a wild, no, well, so, yeah, become a bigger business, no?
A happy, a zesto.
Yeah, happy. So they are mang inasal.
Among inasal, yeah, that's right. So the focus though of MSMEs, you have the business environment, you have the business capacity, and then you also have business opportunities. What should we be looking into first? I guess it would be your business environment. I think we have to start with that. Am I right?
I would say if you had if you were going to start off thinking you want to do business, then what you want to see is what advantages do you have. And the advantage could be the right timing in the environment, or maybe that's not the case. Maybe you have a group of people with the right set of skills, and the environment is wrong now in your region or in your country. Then you move to Manila or you move to Hong Kong. So it depends on what you want to see. What's your strength and what's your weakness, and where does it fit? So the environment is correct if you already have other factors in place. You look at that, but maybe your strength is other factors, and if environment is the issue, then move your environment. So there are you look at what the best way. I say the best way to start in business is really to learn marketing. No, because that is the cheapest, lowest capital in any business. If you become a marketing personality, how to sell, you can do it anywhere in the world. You can do it for service industries, outsourcing. You can do it for tourism. You can do it for manufacturing. You can move from industry to industry, right? So you learn from that. And the best way is probably to learn from a business you see that's doing well, that's not too big. You go work for them, and that's your feasibility study.
Yeah.
Doing well. Now, why I say not too big, because if you go to a bank, they'll have you doing just one very small aspect of the whole thing, and you can never become a bank by working in a bank.
Yeah.
All the owners of banks come from another industry and learn from somewhere else, right? Except for investment banking. You can learn finance and then you become an investment banker. So you work in a hardware store or in a garment store or in a restaurant, learn that business, let the owner be paying the tuition fee, and you learn the skills, you learn the contacts, you meet the clients and have good relations, and go off, start your own.
That's right. So of course also we have to inject, we have to input that MSMEs has a role in nation building. Right? Because I would want for all of us, who have a small business, to look also deeper into, just your business, but be part of nation building.
Yes, definitely. Nation building builds small businesses builds nation building. They supply. They are like the kindergarten. They are training people, giving them experience, giving them income, and that's a starting point. And nearly everyone starts off with a small business. Almost all the tycoons who made it big, many of them are from scratch. No, so the ones who inherit businesses that are large, generally they're not risk takers. So you find that in any country, if you look at the top 10 biggest, at least half of them are the ones started from scratch, usually 60-70%. So even the US, you'll see Steve Jobs started from scratch, Bill Gates started from scratch, Elon Musk started from scratch, and so on. So because the one who started from scratch is the bigger risk taker, and they usually grow faster than the one who inherited the business. Right, and then you
how ironic.
Learn the way to transition so that your business survives generations.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So for people who have these small businesses right now, and they're, it's both excitement and anxiety, George, that people are feeling, because it's about what to expect in uncertain times. I mean, we're still in a pandemic, right? This is never going to go away. It's there and we have to live with it. So what do you think the impact of these rising prices for one would have on our SMEs?
The MSMEs, there's two kinds. One kind is they can move up market and increase their margins. And there's a type that cannot do that. The ones who cannot do that would have to look at either laying back a little or transitioning. What do I mean by those that can do that? If your small business is providing services or products to larger companies that may decide they will no longer continue to do their business, then you can fill in that market. So as companies now are closing restaurants and providers, the new players can come in. And if you have an existing business, you'll probably find that there are additional services you can do. The business process outsourcers will find, instead of shrinking, many of them will find more clients from the Western countries that have to downsize, right? And so also, if the food distributors, what's happening is a lot of farmers are learning to use technology. Farmers and cooperatives, they're using the internet, the digital, to do their marketing. They're marketing right now. If you find marketing directly to homes and our home restaurants, home providers of food, agriculture, a whole new generation of industries is coming up. A lot of secretaries and people are actually becoming assistants to Westerners. They do scheduling, calls, and so on. So they're working from home and they're doing office work for foreigners abroad. In fact, there are on registry over 50,000 Filipinos doing this now. They're outsourcing, but they're not outsourcing working in a big outsource company. Over 50,000 Filipinos are now using the Fiverr and these programs to provide services abroad. Of course, you have the Airbnb. So now many people are putting up little huts and things, and they're marketing their places through the internet. Yeah. So this digitization is destroying a lot of businesses, but also creating a lot of businesses. Yes.
Because it goes direct, right? Anybody can just, yeah.
If you're a tour guide, you don't need to work for a tourist company. If you are a tour guide, you post yourself, and if clients are happy with you, they recommend you to the next people, and the people can come into your site and look at ratings, not just the words, but the ratings that the previous people give, so your previous clients. And so that's a very powerful tool. In fact, it's so powerful. Yeah. It's kind of a pity. I have found that, in the last few years before pandemic, when I was going and even our friends are going to the islands, you'll find a lot of the tour guides and the operators of the small food places and so on are people who used to work in Manila and came back.
Yeah.
And now, because they're making more money there, even fishermen are telling me, we did interviews with Austin and IDSI with fishermen. Many of them stopped. If they were making 300 pesos, 200 pesos a day as fishermen, and now they're making 1,000, 1,500 pesos for half a day in Bohol and these places, because that tourists are hiring them as guides or as bringing the boats or doing service. So they get, they could easily get 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 a day. But the problem is, I think part of the problem is during our interview is then they stop working.
Yeah.
They decide that they're gonna enjoy. They said, nothing wrong every so often, but you want to build scale. So they say, I'm going to spend time with my family, or they'll just spend time and relax with their friends or go drinking.
Yeah. Yes, I know. Sayang. Yeah.
Sayang, because they can accumulate capital. What's happening in small business include the farmers. So technologies is a big game changer. So like the hybrid rice. Hybrid rice, the Doña Maria of Sila Henry Lim, no? It's spreading quite extensively. Those who are using the hybrid rice where it's fit, because it's not fit for all places in the country, it's anywhere from double to ×5 the harvest. And those who are doing it are using the capital that they make to buy up their neighboring farms.
Yeah.
So they're becoming bigger and bigger. but they cannot become very big because by Philippine law, you are limited to 5 hectares.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a limit. So that, if you want to get bigger than that, you have to think of other ways.
Yeah. Creative ways. Right. So yeah, that's a good point. I also experienced that when they make more money, when Filipinos get a chance to make more money in small business, right? Like your example of a fisherman in Bohol. So once they feel it, they decide to spend it, instead of building on more capital. It's this mindset, a cultural thing, because education has to come into play. It happened to us also by experience where you would invest in training, let's say a certain group, so that they can earn from a product. They feel the income, it's more than what they have been used to. But maybe after, give or take 5 6 months, they decide that they have enough. I don't know if the mentality is they already have enough, and that they want to spend time with your family, as what you're saying, go someplace or put up some kind of barbecuehan na lang, and eventually it fails. There's no growth.
But I think at least they took the risk and they learned something.
Well, that's true. That's true. That's another side to it. Yeah.
Yes, those who earn a few 100,000 pesos, actually, many of them, in the provinces, because the women actually work harder than the men in many.
Yeah, it's really true. It's true.
What happens is the men take the money and immediately have a mistress or buy a car.
Or have a drink.
Drink, and I think in any
a couple of drinks.
Yeah, maybe not in professional companies, but in factories you go, every payroll date, the next day, the attendance, the absences is higher. They went out drinking. So
yeah.
But we don't want, I would advocate also not to follow the Chinese model that they work until a month before they die. That's no way to live.
That's hard. That's hard also to change, Sir George, because even in my family alone, it's a mix of Chinese, Spanish, and my grandfather was working till 98 years old, and he lived to 100, right?
Yeah.
If not for an accident, he would be working till 100.
So you living that long too? We have.
Oh no, maybe yeah.
So you need to make a lot of friends. We need to make a longer lifespan. We need to make more friends.
I think so. You're right. So what about investment tips for the Philippines, in terms of economic recovery post-pandemic?
The post-pandemic right now is not the time to try something very new. If you have some idea that you just need to take a small step forward, then go ahead. It's always a good time to do. That means if you have a product that you think might sell, just produce a small quantity and start selling. No, I have a friend here. He's a consultant. For businesses. His wife started just bottled gulaman. They sold in one store. It was doing all right. They package it. So they increased the number of stores, and now they have several dozen stores, right? Things like that. So you can start on a small scale. Even on services, you can start on a small scale. But if you're going to take a chunk of money, resign from your work, and then gamble it, don't do that. No,
Yeah.
This is not a good time, and that's not a good model to follow. No, unless, let's say, you've been running a restaurant, the customers well, how, what products sell, what doesn't sell, what they like about the place, and you think you know how to do it, and you have backers enough to sustain you for a few months of losses, or a year or two, then you might go ahead and do it. But right now it's uncertain. I would not advise something new because there's possibility of another surge. It doesn't look like it will be a dangerous medical situation, but who knows, no? So medyo umakyat ulit yung mga infection. Hindi naman mukhang na-hospital gaano. They don't have emergency. So that means don't hold back totally. Continue learning and then test it in small steps. No,
like proceed with caution.
Yes, start small. It's not, we can't do like the multinational way or mass MBA way na You do a advertising campaign, you do a packaging campaign, you do a campaign for everything. You just do it in small ways. No, that way your risk is limited.
Yeah. Okay. So see, the thing is though, this is what is scaring a bit, well,
If I
in
could
terms
point
of my
out,
friends, right?
yeah,
With small businesses, like what are they going to do when if a surge comes up? You know, are we going to be under lockdown? Which we discussed this in a separate webinar the other day. That it doesn't seem like we're going to go through such a lockdown again.
that
But
doesn't look like. Opta said that it might go up to maybe 400 infections a day from
yeah,
200 something now at the end of the month.
mhm.
But it doesn't. They're not. Nobody is predicting that the hospitals will be full and that people will go into. But that means we have to be prepared to be careful. We don't know if the government might take a very careful stance and say reduce the hours again or reduce the number of people customers you can have. We don't really know that, but if we take our precautions well, then maybe it will never reach that stage, right? That means because now our hospitals know how to do the treatments. Our
Yeah.
doctors know how to treat it at home, so you never have to go to the hospital. You
Mhm.
know, and the infrastructure for picking people up or taking care of things is already in place. So we have those advantages now.
So, what kind of tips would you recommend for small businesses to help them manage, you know, global and domestic risks, and at the same time find opportunities?
I can spend time with people who are in business. If you're in business and you're doing everything yourself, a lot of the functions you do now can actually be outsourced. No, so the risk is much smaller than it used to be, because now it used to be you have to have someone who knows marketing. You build over years and years the marketing expertise in your family. Now you can get a consultant or a friend, right? You can outsource accountants. You can outsource someone who will design, so you don't need to hire and have the overhead of hiring someone to do certain things. If you want capital, if you have a reputation, you have to build a reputation for hard work, knowing your business, and then people will invest with you. No, iba
Mhm.
naman yung you'll ask your friends and relatives and you just have an idea. That's very, very risky. 90% will fail within 2 years, 2 to 3 years.
Mhm.
90% will fail. No, so you can't start with gusto ko magnegosyo and then
Mhm.
magandang negosyo yata itong ano, you saw someone do it, but you have no experience in it.
In
Don't
it.
do that. No. So if you have been borrowing money and your cash flow, you have to count your daily cash flow. You have to make it enough to service that loan, given an additional, maybe possibly a bank or two might decide to call in something. You have to take that into account. So you have a buffer. You have to increase your buffer. And the interest, let's say you used to pay 100,000 a year, you have to be prepared that you might have to pay 130,000 in interest expenses this year. No, you want to make your business flexible. Your contracts are not too long term. No, your inventories are highly flexible. If you're in the food business, don't stock up too much, because
Yeah.
you cannot really keep those items.
Right.
Inflation could be useful for you if you have the cash. You buy commodities, steel products, and these things that, if the war continues and the sanctions continue, they will keep going up. If you have the capital, if you don't have the capital, then reduce your inventory. No?
Right. Yeah. That's correct. How
What
about
happened is a lot of people, if you have an existing business that's doing well and still doing well, a good number of people, not a lot, but a good number of people end up being able to buy the business of their kalaban who
yeah.
goes down. Also, I have friends who have been running one or two Jollibees. Suddenly, they're able to buy franchises at half the price during the pandemic. So instead of paying 30 million, they pay 15 million or 10 million even.
Yeah.
And then they end up, and now the business is just as good as ever.
Yeah.
So they made huge profit that way.
Profits. Yes. What about in terms of technology? How can we support technology, like upgradation?
upgrading. We're trying to promote to the government to have more payments possible through technology, because some agencies are allowing that, and that's the same with businesses. The businesses now, everybody can pay direct, so that's why every home business is okay. You can now, you don't need your own delivery trucks. You have Lala Move, you have Grab.
Yeah.
So if you're cooking items at home, or you're creating toys, or you're doing drop shipping, you're buying items and repackaging and reselling
Yeah.
them. So a lot of people are doing that, and they're learning logistics and business that way. And the children are learning business and record keeping that way. So potentially we have a potential boom coming. But we have also to consider the speed of learning that business, no, because there are competitors coming in. And then we will expect more foreign companies and foreign direct investments, because they just allowed foreigners to come in. So magkakaroon tayo ng mas maraming kalaban. They liberalized foreign investment, so that now with very small investments, they can also come in and own the business majority, or 100%. No, so this business has to, you can do practically everything. People do cooking at home, they do packaging at home, they resell repackaged products, they sell agricultural products, all kinds of, they sell their services. Those are good places to start. You can also become a broker, a broker for real estate or almost anything, for cars, because laway lang yan eh. Laway sa pagbiyahe. So you don't buy the car, you don't buy the house, you but learn to do the contract. Don't trust people. You have to know, don't trust people just because they're your buddies for the last 20 years. Don't trust people just because they're your kamag-anak and they love you or you love them. Don't trust your boyfriend or girlfriend.
Yeah.
Business is different relationship.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
That's right. It's
So-
very Chinese, I learned that from my Lola, even. But that's really true, huh?
Treat your boyfriend or girlfriend or your friends out when you make money. Don't make them your partners.
Right. There are no friends in actually you lose friends sometimes in business. That's the truth. In terms of
friends, and you will lose your business.
yeah, right? That's difficult. So might as well, just lay it out straight. In terms of infrastructural development and modernization, how can we further support this?
The infrastructure, the government is building so much roads. I think they will continue to do that, so that even in the provinces, what used to be not reachable is going to become reachable. And in fact, you can, if you will know, if you talk to the local governments where they plan to put on more roads. So if you're planning to sell your land before, and by next year or in 2 years there will be a road, hold on, because then you can triple or quadruple your price. Right? Or you thought you could not deliver your farm items, now you could. Or you thought that tourists cannot reach you, and now they will reach you.
Yeah.
And the government, this government, although it had a lot of critics, it had a lot of achievements. Also, they opened so many new airports, so many new ports, put lights on the airports. A simple thing as putting lights, extended the hours to nighttime. When the travel starts right now, that local tourism is very strong. It's all, I'm amazed, it's all full. If I ask even the Metro Manila hotels, I want to book them they're full. And it's not mostly foreigners, because they can't freely travel yet. So even if you go to Boracay or Bohol or the Batangas resorts, they're full. Now you have to book. So get ready for the boom when the foreigners come in again. Right? If we're in place, so we have something to look forward to prepare for. Well, right now we should be careful. The infrastructure, prepare your infrastructure. Government is doing the physical infrastructure. They have encouraged and they have forced the telcos to increase, and China has helped to put up the infrastructure along with European and American companies for digital. So it's reaching farther than it used to. Learn to use these infrastructures. You don't need others to do that marketing for you, that Facebook marketing, that Instagram marketing. You can start building markets already. Look at how one way is to look at how the leaders or the ones doing well are doing it. Gayahin na lang.
Oh, nga. Gayahin na lang.
If you have that digital infrastructure, and then you have the payment infrastructure, know how to open your GCash, or your bank account, and you've got already two legs of a business that before used to take you many years to set up.
That's right. That's right. And then if we empower digital more, right, then we'll have, it's an education because everybody has to be on board with this. Everybody needs to go digital somewhat, right? And it
Yes.
takes a lot of, it takes an education to really even bring it down
Yes.
to the grassroots.
And a lot of the products that we're selling just needs to be repackaged because our packaging tradition has been very poor, no? So,
Yeah, that's true.
you go to Laguna or Tagaytay or to Calamba, and the buko pie that used to be wrapped in a cardboard box without label. Today, it's still wrapped in a cardboard box without,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Not everyone, but a lot of them. So, if you are in one of those family business, just upgrading a little makes a big difference. We've helped a lot of small business do packaging, and there are government has agencies doing that, helping you do packaging. Improved packaging can do a lot. I'm surprised. I'm not for it, but I'm not against it because we're selling a lot more banana chips now, and
Hmm.
the people selling them are people from China and Vietnam.
Hmm.
Why are they the ones doing it? They get our banana chips, they package them nicer, and then they're able to sell for a higher price. No,
Yeah.
that's something that we can do ourselves. We don't need foreigners to do that for us.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. What though should small businesses focus on, or maybe on in terms of starting something if they want to start something? What's the most traditional or maybe the most conservative move, right, for people who want to get into a business? Because we also in the Philippines, we have done it for quite some time where we want to teach people to become more entrepreneurial, right? And but the Filipino, somewhat, still have that part where there's also a little bit afraid because of risks. So what would be a clever way to venture into a business
There
that's
are a lot of small operations to get into. There's a lot of construction going on. People need skilled people. If you have a group of friends who know how to construct, you put a little construction group together. It doesn't even have to be a company. Just be reliable. But the tendency is because the one who gets the money from the company doesn't pay off the others, and the group falls apart. Right?
not the first time I heard that.
It
Yeah,
happens all the time.
it
No,
happens all
here,
the
no,
time.
not just. So if you can have a group of friends, you can already start subcontracting work with some realty company, right? So there are things like that. If you have a good group of people who know, one group knows how to paint and tile. We are looking for people. We're looking
Mm-hmm.
for contractors all over because the real estate is in strong ngayon. Eh. That's one.
Mm-hmm.
Two is if you don't take capital risk, is better. So market a product, market maybe real estate. You put up a website or a YouTube or something of your own, and you get clients, and you do marketing, or maybe you just keep doing the video because people are paying people to do video marketing. Now you can do digital marketing as an employee, or you can do it as a business, because that's what they call them trolls, but actually, like I might hire, or somebody might hire, okay, you send out 3 stories a day for me, or
Mm-hmm.
make 5 responses for me for the people who answer, who make comments in my site. You answer them for me, and you show me at the end of each day. I pay you for that. A lot of companies are doing that. A lot of people are. Last night I was eating out with some Filipinos who came from the US and from China. 2 of them were doing that. 2 or 3
Mm-hmm.
of them, they just stay at home, and if you have people who know how to place, people who know how to write, maybe you know how to write and where to place it.
Yeah.
Maybe I give you a story and say, I'm a salon, a restaurant, a resort or something. I say, Pia, can you get me this many stories out? Some of them, they say, just give me this many comments, respond to make sure that the people commenting on my site get responses. You have to know how to respond, and you do that. You show me you already have a business, either as an employee or as whatever. No?
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. So
That's telemarketing, isn't it?
yes, yes. But now you don't have to do it for a big company.
Yeah.
Companies here will hire you to do that. The
Nice.
companies abroad will hire you. If you know how to market, they will pay 3 to 4 times what the local will pay you.
Nice.
So actually, people doing the same thing here locally. If you do it, some people they learn to jump, and I ask them, and basically it's 3 times the price. So if you do scheduling for me informally, instead of doing it in the office, I pay you this much, close to local rates. But then I don't have someone on my payroll that I have to think of retirement and all these things for, right? I don't have to manage. But if you found your client in UK or Germany or US, they probably pay you 3 to 5 times as much.
Yeah.
So you can take steps to do that. I think services is a very, or small items to sell. Because services is walang puhunan ka masyado eh.
Oo nga.
Yung skill mo eh. So I would say you can get your broker's license or agent's license for real estate and go out sell the real estate. Or if maboka ka, you can sell. Go to the person who's selling anything. Water purifiers, anything. No? And then be their agent. Become their agent. I have friends selling for oil companies oil.